Morning, church. Those of you who are joining us online, we're very glad to have you with us today. I want to take a moment. Wasn't yesterday special? Trunk or treat was just great. And special thanks to Brooke Copeland and Jane Hooker and Vicki Walker for doing so much work, and to so many of you who participated in that. It's a tremendous day. You know, talking to Carol last night, I really think one of the great values of what happened yesterday was not just the fellowship and the outreach. Did you get a sense of normal? It has been so long since it's just been normal. And yesterday just felt normal, and it was just wonderful to enjoy that. We announced last Sunday night and Wednesday night, but if you haven't heard, thank you so much for your generosity in the Orphans Lifeline contribution. $20,000 is going to go to Orphans Lifeline, and that's just tremendous. They do such a good work, and yeah. This morning, I want us to spend a little time talking about how important it is that we hate sin. I think it's very, very important that in a day and age when we're surrounded by it, seem enmeshed in it at times, we understand the protection that comes when we have the attitude toward it that God would have us to have. In Proverbs chapter 6, verses 16 through 19, Solomon writes, "There are 6 things the Lord hates, 7 that are detestable to him: haughty eyes, a lying tongue, hands that shed innocent blood, a heart that devises wicked schemes, feet that are quick to rush into evil, a false witness who pours out lies, and a man who stirs up dissension among brothers." I think it's very important to understand that God hates sin. And I think when we talk about God hating sin, we need to ask ourselves, well, why? Why does he hate sin like he does? And I'd like to submit to you that I think one of the reasons why he hates sin so much is because he loves us and he cares about us. I mean, if you love someone, you hate whatever it is that hurts him. Disease. I know it's you, man. I hate COVID. All aspects of it. Not only because it has taken so many lives, but because it has been such an incredible disruption in all of our lives. And it's been such a polarizing thing in so many ways. I hate it. And I hate it because it hurts. And I hate things that hurt people I love. I hate abuse. I know you do too. When I find out about a child that's been abused, or even, they show on television sometimes on the evening news, we'll have these awful people who will abuse horses or abuse cattle or have a puppy mill or something like that. And you just hate to see innocent creatures abused like that. We rebel against it, and we should. Sin hurts. It hurts the perpetrator. It hurts the victim. Too often, it hurts the innocent bystander. One of the things that I think should break all of our hearts, it's just like, for instance, in Chicago, over the last few months, how many funerals have they had to conduct for 4-year-olds and 5-year-olds and 7-year-olds who have been murdered in drive-by shootings? Gang members blasting at each other and really not caring about the fact that they might hit an innocent, and they have. And children, little ones, innocent, man, they're not involved in what's going on in any way. They just happen, unfortunately, heartbreakingly, to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, but they're just as dead. And I hate that. Sin hurts. And especially what's heartbreaking is so often it hurts the innocent. My question to you is, do you hate sin? Oh yeah, I hate sin. And do we really? I mean, do you despise, let me use some synonyms here. Do you despise, do you loathe, do you abhor, do you detest sin in all its forms? Do you see all sin as repulsive, like vomit or a hog wallow? In 2 Peter 2 verse 22, I don't think it's accidental that Peter chooses a couple of really gross examples of what we consider to be nasty and filthy as representing going back to sin and talking about a dog returning to its vomit or a hog back to its wallow. He wants you to know this is really, really repulsive, ugly stuff. Now, let me illustrate. You all know I hate liver. I loathe it. I despise it. I abhor it. I detest it in all its forms. I have, remember a few years ago, I made this silly mistake of making a vow that if you read so many chapters, I would eat that nasty stuff, and you read those chapters. And I had to eat that nasty stuff. And it had been close to 50 years since liver had crossed my lips. And I remember distinctly why it had been almost 50 years. It is still just as nasty as it ever was. And it, I'm not saying I'm going to live another 50, but if I do, it probably won't cross my lips again during that time. I want no part of it. Now, here's the thing. I do not hate food. I hate liver, but I don't hate food. And my point is, it's possible to hate a sin without hating sin. And I think that can get us in trouble. Because we hate a sin, we hate some sins, but we don't hate sin. And so, if we're going to reflect the Father's attitude, that means we've got to hate it all. Not just certain ones, but all sin. Hebrews 12 verse 1. Remember, the writer there speaks of the sin which does so easily beset us. Ooh. Hear that? It's so easy for it to get a hold of us. It's so easy for it to mess up our lives. Now, what are some keys to dealing with that which can so easily beset us? I want to share with you 4 this morning that I hope you'll find helpful. Number 1, we've got to constantly be on guard. And I know that sounds wearing and all that kind of stuff, but I'll guarantee you, man, the alternative to that is not good. You've got to constantly be on guard. When I was a kid, traveling up to see my grandparents up in northeastern Kansas, they had ICBM bases up there at that time, stuck out in the middle of nowhere. And they'd be fenced and have the coils of wire around them and all that. But on every one of them, this is 50, 60 years ago, they would have a sign, and I always said the same thing. The price of peace is eternal vigilance. A lot of truth to that. A lot of truth to that. Whether you're talking about national security, whether you're talking about security for your family, your home, whether you're talking about security for you, the price of peace in many ways really is constantly being on guard, constantly paying attention. Think about it. David, in a sense, took a nap spiritually. And the result, his involvement with Bathsheba tore his life apart and the lives of so many others apart as well. I hate liver. I hate, loathe, despise, detest snakes. Dan's never going to have a pet snake. I guarantee you, ain't going to happen. I don't like to hold them. I don't think they're cute. I don't want to be around them. I want no part of them whatsoever. What's this mean if I'm out hunting or playing golf or something like that? It means that I avoid places where they might be. Steve or Charlie Butto will tell you that on rare occasions, I'll hit a ball in the rough. Every once in a while, it just happens. During the fall of the year, the rough is covered with leaves. During the fall of the year, Dan will not go look for his ball. It's gone. Bye-bye. Because there's a real possibility, however remote it might be, that there's going to be a copperhead out of those leaves. And I am not going to encounter that copperhead for a lousy golf ball. I will sacrifice the golf ball. I'm constantly on the watch for snakes. I guarantee you, if I ever get snake bit, it will not be for lack of attention. It will not be because I wasn't watching. Now, it's that same kind of diligence that's required in our battle against sin. We need to be able to say, like the psalmist in Psalm 18, verse 23, I have been blameless before him and have kept myself from sin. I've really tried to pay attention. I think that's so important. We must constantly be on guard, constantly be aware. Secondly, don't ignore the little sins to concentrate on the big ones. And I think this is a mistake that a lot of people make. And let me define. Little sin, what are we talking about? Well, do you like my new haircut? And really you're going, honey, you shouldn't have done that, But you don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. So, yeah. We call that a little white lie, don't we? As opposed to first-degree murder, where you plot and you go out and you just take somebody's life deliberately. Man, that's a huge one, okay? And, But the fact of the matter is, in the eyes of God, sin is sin. Now, no question, there are hierarchies of sin, and even the Old Testament will make it clear. There are some sins that are worse than others, and it's because they have more severe consequences than others. That's why there's different punishments outlined in the Old Testament depending on the severity of the sin. But the fact of the matter is that I think sometimes we get in trouble because we go, well, at least I'm not involved in some of the big ones. I may be having a problem with some of the little ones, but I'm not involved in the really big ones. Let me give you a couple of biblical examples of what I'm talking about. Moses hated idolatry. Man, he hated it. Exodus 32, he comes down off Mount Sinai, and he sees the people down below, and they're worshiping that golden calf, and he is furious. Takes the Ten Commandments, smashes them, gets down there, chews the people out, takes that golden calf, grinds it into powder, puts it in water, makes them drink it, really, really works them over. Man, he's upset. What felled him? It was anger, wasn't it? Lost his temper, didn't he? And that's what kept him out of the promised land. Wasn't idolatry. He hated idolatry, man. What got him was anger. David despised the abuse of power. 2 Samuel 12, 1 through 6, when Nathan confronts him, remember he tells him a story about that rich man who has stolen the lamb from that poor man to feed a guest. Boy, David's just, he's going to get him, work him over. David hated the abuse of power. What got him? Lust. 2 Samuel 11 with Bathsheba, man, that's what brought him down. Wasn't abusing power. It was lust. But he got him. Every sin is inherently dangerous. There are no sins that don't have consequences associated with them. And some of those consequences are deadly. I mean, think about it. Would you give yourself permission to drink a little strychnine every day because you avoided cyanide? I don't think so. Poison, brethren, is poison. And sin is poison. It is. Remember Paul's admonition in 1 Thessalonians 5, verse 22, where he says, abstain from every appearance of evil? Why? Because there are no little sins that can't ultimately have big consequences in your life. Thirdly, recognize that sin is never our buddy. It's always our enemy. And I really think if we're honest with ourselves, most of us have a pet sin. One that's just kind of our friend. And yeah, we hate sin, but we've got our little buddy. And maybe it's in a bottle, maybe it's a pill, maybe it's an attitude, an image, a plate, I don't know. It can be all different kinds of things. But it's our pet. And we kind of like to hold on to it. The devil would love you to believe that your sin has no consequences, that no one's going to catch you in the lie, that the affair is going to remain a secret. But the fact of the matter is, over and over again, heartbreakingly, sin has a way of getting out of control. People, I've got this one figured out. Nobody's going to catch me in this. And yeah, right. How often are they wrong? How many of you took that first drink and envisioned themselves as alcoholics? You know, again, if you take a group of kindergartners, you get 20 of those cute little characters together, and you pull them, and you go, what do you want to be when you grow up? Well, I want to be a fireman, I want to be a policeman, I want to be a nurse, I want to be a teacher, etc. How many are going to say, you know, when I'm 35, I envision myself as an alcoholic? Zero. When I'm 35, I'm going to be an addict, living from fix to fix, homeless, on the streets, my health and my life a wreck. But that's what I want to be. That's where I want to go. You're not going to hear that. But millions of 5-year-olds are going to be 10-year-olds and 15-year-olds, and somewhere along the line, they're going to decide, I'm going to take that drink, I'm going to shoot that up, I'm going to smoke that, I'm going to ingest that. And when they're 35, they're walking dead people. That wasn't what they planned. That wasn't their dream. They gave sin an invitation. And sin wreaks a price, a heartbreaking price. What man dreamed looking at pornographic videos online would turn into an addiction that would cost him his job, his marriage, his freedom, and his self-respect? I've known several. Breaks your heart. Destroyed their lives, destroyed their marriages, destroyed their families, destroyed their careers. It happens. And the consequences are awful. We need James' warning. James 4, verse 4. Friendship with the world is enmity with God. Sin's never your buddy. It's always your enemy. Share a thought with you. I was got a good friend who, medical doctor, who most of the work that he does is with people, helping them to control their weight, lose weight, diet, that kind of thing. And I asked him, I said, what's the key? In your mind, what's the key to people losing weight and keeping it off? He had an interesting response, and it was immediate. He didn't hesitate. He said, the folks that keep the weight, that lose the weight and keep the weight off, see food as an enemy instead of a friend. They view every meal as a challenge instead of a treat. And they see food as an enemy instead of a friend. Very profound. And that's the way we need to view sin, in the same way. Fourthly, lastly, we've got to be rigorously honest with ourselves. I put this up here. Some of you may remember a lesson I preached several years ago that I called Rats in the Attic. Now, if you don't remember, don't feel bad, because I don't remember what I preached 3 weeks ago. So I don't retain it all that well either. But I preached a sermon one time called Rats in the Attic. My point in Rats in the Attic was this. There are people who have rats up in the attic, and they know they're there, they can hear them, but they just ignore them. Because it's easier to ignore them than it is to pay attention to them and do something about them. So they just let them run, and they really don't pay attention. And I think there's nothing that the devil likes any more than for us to ignore the poison of sin in our lives. Psalm 36, verse 2. Think about this one. For in his own eyes he flatters himself too much to detect or to hate his sin. Ooh. One of the things that we need to be aware of is how easy it is for us to make excuses for our own weaknesses and for our own sins, and not to honestly face up to them. Why are we wiser about our physical than our spiritual health so often? If your doctor says you have diabetes, you'll probably watch your sugar like a hawk. If a physician warns you about your cholesterol and says, hey, your cholesterol is dangerously high, probably there goes the sausage and eggs. I mean, we pay attention when we get warning signs about our physical health. Well, what about our spiritual health? We can't kid ourselves that a pet sin isn't going to hurt anything, or that it's not a problem, because it can be a huge problem. There's really only one way to win victory over the power of sin, and that is to give our lives to the one who has already won the victory for us. I mean, think about it. Only Jesus can cleanse us. Titus 3 verse 5, he saved us not because of works done by us in righteousness, but according to his own mercy, by the washing of regeneration and renewal of the Holy Spirit. We can't clean ourselves up, not and keep ourselves as clean as we need to be, but he can and he will. Secondly, he'll keep us clean. 1 John 1:7, if we walk in the light as he is in the light, we have fellowship with one another, and the blood of Jesus, his Son, cleanses us ongoingly from all sin. We can't clean ourselves up, we can't keep ourselves clean, but he can clean us up and keep us clean in his blood. And thirdly, he promises to protect us from the adversary. 1 Corinthians 10:13, God is faithful, and he will not allow you to be tempted beyond your ability, but with the temptation, he will also provide the way of escape, that you may be able to endure it. Listen to him. He wants you to make it through it. He's not saying it's going to be easy. He's talking about enduring temptation. And sometimes, man, you got to endure temptation. But he says, I will make sure that you are never faced with something that you can't endure, that you can't overcome. There'll always be a way of escape for you. May God help us to see sin in the same way that he does. And this morning, if you're ready for his cleansing, ready to allow him to make you whole, that's why he sent his Son, to do exactly that. That's the purpose of his Son's coming, is to offer himself as a perfect sacrifice, to do what we can't do, and that is to make atonement for our sins, to give us a relationship with God that will last right on into eternity, unimpaired by our failures, because he makes us right with what he does for us. If you're ready to confess him, ready to put on your Lord in baptism, we can help you in any way. Please come while we stand and while we sing.